Welcome to the Good Bad Mad podcast, a show that's here to share the ins and outs of creative careers, connecting the aspirational with the experienced, with your host, me, Meg Ellis. My guest for this episode is Jamie Roberts. She's head of casting at Disney Animation. She talks us through her career, her job role, and gives us a real insight into the Frozen casting process. Hope you enjoy it. Jamie, hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm awesome. I am awesome. I'm happy to be here.
So what we're all about at the Good Bad Mad is really kind of delving into creative careers and finding out the ins and outs, what's involved with them beyond, people know what an actor does, they know what a director does, but beyond that, it can get a little bit fuzzy, even for people who are already in the industry. So we want to find out all about casting, please. I'm so excited to kind of dig in and get going. So let's start with your journey into casting. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, it's interesting because I haven't met anybody that, that's told me that they grew up thinking to themselves, hey, I want to be a casting director, because I don't think a lot of people really know what a casting director is or does, like you said. And so it's not something that I think that people necessarily aspire to be, or at least not when I was a child. I'm 46 years old, and I don't think that most people even know that a casting director exists, especially when they're young. A casting director facilitates the hiring of actors in either television, movies, commercials, plays. And when I say facilitates, they are the front line in bringing in the talent to show either the directors or producers or whoever the person is that's hiring the talent for said project. And the person who comes up with the ideas for, who to put in front of those people. I like to think of myself as a person who is really good at puzzles. So the director will give me an idea of what it is that they're looking for a project. Either they'll hand me the script, or they will give me a general idea of who the characters are, or they'll explain the story to me. And then the first thing that happens to me is I get ideas in my head, either based on people that I already know, or I start to think about which representatives I know that might have people that would be right for those roles, or I start to think about where I could go digging for people that could be, or for actors that might be right for those parts. Or I think to myself, I don't know where those people exist, so I have to start doing research on where I might be able to find those people. And my journey getting to where I am right now is interesting because, like I said, it never occurred to me that I might be good at doing this, or this might be a role that I should pursue, because I had no idea what I wanted to be. I'm kind of one of those people that's a jack of all trades, master of none. And I was floating in high school and in college. I really didn't know, which major I should choose. I think I went in undeclared and took the classes, the prerequisites for a billion different majors. And I probably was getting ready not to graduate.
So your family weren't in the industry?
No, my family wasn't in the industry, although my parents did have some friends that were affiliated in the industry, because I did grow up in Los Angeles, and just by proxy, they knew some people. My parents were in the garment industry and in fashion. And it just, my sister and I kind of grew up around it. We knew some kids when we were in, junior high and high school who were actors, but it wasn't something that we thought about, because it was just kind of there. It wasn't a big deal. It was just something that people just did. And I was not interested in it, I should say. And then when I was in college and I was not graduating, my parents asked my sister, who's older than I am,
Yeah.
to kind of have a conversation with me about getting my act together and finishing up school. I think more than anything, they were tired of paying for it.
I love how your parents sent your sister to do the intervention.
Right.
I love that passing off.
Right. Well, my sister was always more of the motivated one and focused, and so, and she actually was already in the entertainment industry, and I guess she always wanted that. And she had started working at a talent agency while I was still in college. And so she offered to get me a job one summer when I was going to come home from school for the summer. And she said, hey, listen, I can get you a job working at this management company while you're home, and just see if it's something that you like, and it's easy. You can live at mom and dad's and, for the summer and work this job, and maybe it'll be something that you like, and then you can focus and graduate and, find a job, whatever, or stay with this. And so I did that. She got me a job working for a management company that she had been doing business with. And I loved many aspects of working in management, mainly being around the talent, the actors that I was working with. This management company had hired me to pick up some actors from their auditions, one in particular, actually, pick him up from his auditions, run lines with him, take him home, make sure he was prepared for his next audition, dressed, ran lines with him, he was on time, whatever it was, or take him to whatever it was that he needed. I was running him around. He didn't have a car. He was about the same age as me. He was kind of messing up a little bit, and they really believed in him. And then I did a little bit of work in the office for them. And at the end of the summer, I was getting ready to go back to school, and they said, you're really great at this, and you're good with the actors, and we like you. Do you want to work in the office for us? Why don't you think about transferring, home next semester, and you can come to work for us while you're in school, come work for us part-time. So I did that, mainly because I didn't know what the heck else I was going to do.
But you know what? If an opportunity presents itself, there's no harm in taking it, is there? If you've got no other plans.
Yeah, and I really liked them, and I liked, I loved my bosses, actually, and I liked the business, and I liked the shuffle, and I hadn't been exposed to any of the ugly that I later on figured out that I didn't like about management.
Okay.
So I transferred home from college to a university that was near my parents' house, and I worked until I was finished with college at this management company and in their office. And when I say ugly, it wasn't really ugly. It was just, I didn't like the negotiating and the selling of the actor. I hated thinking about them as a commodity. And unfortunately, when you work at an agency or at a management company, that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
I also didn't like being on the receiving end of the phone calls from the actors where something didn't go right for them at an audition, or they weren't booking and they were getting desperate for money or whatever. It was hard to listen to, but that is the job of the manager, to help, figure out what's next for the actor. And also something that was missing for me was the creative on the daily. Managers do have a little bit of the creative because they have to navigate an actor's career once the career has been established. If you're developing a career for an actor, it's a little bit harder to get creative because you don't have as many options. But I was missing the creative, I think. And so when I graduated, my bosses offered me a full-time position for the management company that I was working for. And I actually turned them down. And I said, my heart's not in this. I love you guys and I love the clients, but I don't want to do this. And they both said to me, you should be in casting. And they actually got me a job right out of college. They sent me over to one of their friends that was looking, a casting director who was looking for an assistant they sent me over to her office, and she hired me on the spot. And she was doing 5 pilots in one pilot season, which was kind of unheard of. This was a really long time
That
ago.
sounds like a trial by fire.
Yeah, to think of doing 5 pilots now, the way that the industry works now, and I don't even know if pilot season is going to exist the way that we used to know it now, but to think of doing 5 pilots now is like ridiculous. But I did, I jumped in, and I worked with an associate and this casting director, and they just kind of taught me everything that they knew. And it was sink or swim, like you said, and it just lit me up. I just couldn't think of doing anything else, and I had the best time. And it was so fast moving. I didn't even have time to think about, being busy, or I didn't have time to think about anything but having, but absorbing everything that I possibly could. And like figuring out that this is who I was. I was like, I could do this all day, every day for the rest of my life. It felt right.
What was it that excited you the most about it?
It's so funny because it's this gut thing that it felt right. It just felt right. I felt like I was in my zone.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing, and because I've talked to actors about it before, that compels them to chase a career in acting, even when they're not successful. The thing that pushes them to keep pursuing it, it's that calling, whatever it is.
No, it's 100% a thing. I mean, me personally, my background's in theatre. I started working in theatre when I was about 13. And although I'm still on the journey to figuring out what it is that I want to do, is it writing, directing, acting, whatever, there is a calling to be part of this industry. I can't imagine doing anything else apart from within this industry. And a calling's the only way you can describe it. I think you just get that feeling.
It's like a charge. People often ask, like, well, how do you know who's right for a movie? Like, how do you know when somebody walks in a room and they audition and you say to yourself, oh, that's the person? Well, I don't have an answer for you. It just is. It's subjective. I mean, I'm hired by the company that I work for, for the Disney company, for my opinion. It's just, it's my gut feeling. It's magic. It's whatever it is. It's the same thing that happened to me when I was in that first seat doing those pilots with that casting director, that made me realize this is what I need to be doing. It just is. It's the feeling that I'm in the right place, and this is right, and all of the planets are aligned, and everything's coming together, and this is the way that it's supposed to be.
So after that pilot season, you were like, okay, this is it. I'm a casting director.
No.
Or
I'm not a casting. I was casting assistant. I was like, I don't know anything. It was like, a pilot season is basically like 3 months, and so the casting director that I was working for was like, I just blew every ounce of energy that I have. I'm going to Tuscany for the summer. See ya. And she bailed. So I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have a job.
Right.
I need to find one. And so I realized, I learned that, okay, this is the nature of freelance casting, which is very difficult. It's much like being an actor in that basically you have to find a new job every 10 to 12 weeks when you freelance.
Right.
So that was very hard on me. I did find another job relatively quickly, and I got lucky because I was on staff I got hired by a casting director who had a staff position at Universal Television at the time. And so I spent a year there as her assistant, and I learned a whole other set of skills in television, and I worked on more pilots and TV series and what it was like to be on staff at a studio. And then I did another, she actually was going to move to Warner Brothers, and there was a little gap in between her stints. And so I worked for another casting director team in a freelance capacity for a bit. And then I moved over to Warner Brothers with her. And then after spending a year with her at Warner Brothers, realized it's time to take the leap and become an associate and, really get the apprenticeship that I needed to figure out how I was going to become a casting director.
You talk me through those steps. What's the difference between going from assistant to associate to director?
Well, there's no clear-cut path for any one person. Everybody's journey is different, but an assistant really, for the most part, handles most of the administrative duties of the casting office. I would say if I had to, compartmentalize the jobs, they set up the auditions, they schedule them, they answer the phones, they, greet the actors, they shuffle the paperwork. It used to be that we would type up the contracts. That doesn't happen so much anymore. They schedule the tests. It's more administrative. The associate position is, segueing into the casting director position. They act more as a junior partner, is the way that I would explain it. They're more of a creative partner. They still do some of the assistant position jobs, but they also have a hand in what's going on creatively. They might generate lists. They would give the casting director suggestions, maybe who to bring in. They would probably also do a lot of the pre-reads, which are the auditions that happen in advance of whoever is being shown to the director. The screening process that to weed out whoever it is that's not going to be moving forward. It's really a junior level casting director. It's somebody that is, I like to say that my associate is my right hand.
Right.
And then that's really what prepares the person to become a casting director. And that's really where I learned what my taste is and what my style was going to be when I jumped into that role. So I left Warner Brothers because Warner Brothers had about 12 casting directors on staff at that time at the studio, and all of their assistants were vying for 2 associate positions.
Okay.
So I was basically the last one in. So it was like everybody kind of felt like you needed to get in line at that. And I wasn't going to wait. And I had gone to the big boss there at the time. And I said, is there any way that I can get on some kind of an accelerated path? Because I don't want to sit behind all these people waiting to get in as an associate. And I didn't really get a clear answer. So I left. Yeah. And I went to go work for a freelance casting director who had a pretty prolific career at that point. And I worked on some of the most fun projects that I possibly could have asked for. And I worked with her at different studios, and I got a taste of what it was like to work on, teen comedies and action adventures and thrillers. And we worked at projects at Fox and at Disney and at Warner Brothers. And I worked with her only on features, which was good because I had a very television heavy career up to that point. And so that was it was a shift for me in exposure to different types of actors, also because in that time there was definitely a dichotomy. There were the actors that went in for TV stuff, and there were the actors that came in for movie stuff. It wasn't as mixed as it is now.
So is there a difference in terms of how you approach casting between television and live action film?
Well, you had access to a lot more talent if you were working on film than if you did on television, because there were just actors that just wouldn't even consider working on television.
Right.
So you had access to a different group. You had a wider net that you could cast in features. And the process was different because it seemed like, to me, a lot less people had to sign off on somebody in features than did in television, because when you work in television, at least back then, the actor would be signing up for basically 6 years if it was a series regular position. And the network would be signing somebody up for 6 years, theoretically. So all of these people, the studio, the network, whomever, they would have to all sign off on, do we think audiences are going to tune in to watch this person for the next 6 years? So there were a lot of cooks in the kitchen trying to decide whether or not it was worth investing in this person for 6 years. So I think there was a lot more scrutiny in television. So the process was a little bit different, yes.
So I think just picking up on what you said then, I think there's this almost common misconception that casting directors are the gatekeepers. You know, they're the ultimate decision makers regarding who gets the casting roles. Can we clarify that a little bit?
Well, I don't like to think of them as being, I think of gatekeeper as being somebody who's prohibitive. I think that casting directors are the actor's best friend. At least I like to think of myself that way, because if I get an actor cast in a movie, then I've done my job and I've helped somebody else. Like, I want the actor that I bring in to book the job. It's my job to get you cast. So I'm your friend. I want you to come in and I want you to do well. And I want you to have the best audition that you possibly can, because if you book the job, then my job's done and I look good. So I don't like to look at casting directors as gatekeepers. I think that, you know, we're advocates.
You're offering
opportunity
for them to showcase themselves the best possible way, so you can take it to the director, the producer, anyone else who's involved, and say, this person's great, we want them, what do you think?
Yes, it's kind of like, this is kind of a silly analogy, but you see a lot of like, we'll see dogs in movies, for instance, like Dobermans or Rottweilers or something. You'll see these dogs and they're salivating and they're growling, and it's a movie. And then you see a Doberman in person and it's like like, I've never met a Doberman that's growled or snarled or that's, you know, salivated and looked like it was going to attack me. They're all sweet as peaches. But if you look at casting directors in movies, for instance, they're always portrayed as these, you know, horrible people who are like, you're too fat, or you're ugly, or get out of my office, or they're, you know, they're cranky and they're mean. And it's like, so people have this perception of the casting director being, like you said, the gatekeeper, or, you know, naysaying people. Or the casting director should be the actor's biggest cheerleader. I mean, that's how I feel about my job. I'm not going to bring anybody into the director that I'm not going to champion. What's the point? That's a waste of my time and a waste of the actor's time.
Exactly. No one's evil, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and like I've said so many times before, like, for me, the best part of my job is that I get actors coming into my office. That how lucky am I that I get people coming in who perform for me. They do a scene for me. A lot of times it's funny. They crack me up. They make me laugh. Then they sing for me, because I do all these musicals, which I love. And they're a lot of times most of the time when they come in, they're happy, they're hopeful, there's an opportunity for them. They come in, it's like I get to meet a new person who's got a smile on their face, and they want to chat and they want to tell themselves, you know, they want to tell me about themselves, and they want to hear about me. And they're like, you know, like, what could be better than that?
I know, it does sound absolutely lovely. It
doesn't have to be difficult or painful, or I know that it's really hard to tell an actor not to have anxiety or to be nervous before they go in to see a casting director, or not to come off desperate or whatever it is. But it's just, you know, we're people too. The casting director is a person and they have a job to do. And if the actor doesn't do their job, if they're unable to do it because they're so anxious because they think the casting director is going to be mean to them, or the casting director is mean to them, then the casting director can't do their job either.
Yeah.
So there's no point in having an adversarial relationship between the casting director and the actor.
Hmm.
So, but I do know there are casting directors out there that aren't particularly nice, but that's just life in general. There are people that aren't nice.
Oh, that's true. That's true. So you were working in live action features. When did you get to Disney?
It was sometime in 2006. I actually, before I started working on staff at Disney, I was working in a freelance capacity on Enchanted for the head of casting at Disney, who was Marsha Ross. I was the associate on Enchanted for her. I officially, I think, went on staff at Disney in 2007. And so I was working in live action casting at Disney in 2007, and then sometime not that long afterwards, maybe a year and a half or so, or actually a little less than a year into it, I was helping out in animation. They had some extra work that needed some attention, and my boss in live action offered me up to help them out, and so I started working on they were doing some TV specials and I helped out on those. They were called Prep and Landing. They were some Christmas specials and they were super cute. And then there was some reorganization going on in live action, and I honestly don't even know exactly how it happened, but it was fortuitous because I landed in animation in the position in the head of the department in animation casting after not really having too much animation experience as a casting director. And I thought to myself, like, can I do this? Like, somebody thinks that I can because they put me here. Yeah. But I got really lucky because I landed there, and it has been a dream job working with incredibly talented, intelligent, amazing people on projects that I am, extremely proud of. And I've learned a tremendous amount working there. And it's just casting something completely different than I ever thought that I would. I mean, if you'd have asked me at 23 when I started doing this, that if I'd ever be casting Disney animated features, I would be very confused by that, because animation was never something that was an interest of mine. But now that I'm doing it
oh, I mean, how can you not fall in love with animation? I mean,
everybody loves Disney movies. You can't not love Disney movies. I mean, they're beautiful, and the music, and when you watch a musical, or the colors and just the artwork, it's mesmerizing.
It's gorgeous. I mean, they're always my go-to carpool karaoke songs, not gonna lie.
Of course.
So, what's the difference between casting for live action and casting for animation?
That's a great question. And for me, I think that it is for when I had to switch gears and I started mostly casting animation, I realized that if you shut your eyes and you listen to somebody's performance, like let's say you're watching a movie and you close your eyes and you listen, can you still get the same movement of emotion inside yourself by listening to the performance that you can if your eyes are open? If you can, then that actor would be good at voiceover. If you cannot, then they are not meant for voiceover. That does not mean that they're not a good actor. It just means they're better, that they have, something, a charisma that is visual. There are a lot of actors who I consider the finest of our time that have something about them that speaks through their eyes, or the way that they move. There are just some actors that to me just are physically charismatic. It's not even about like, do they do physical humor or something. It's more about, I often use Joaquin Phoenix as an example. To me, when you watch Joaquin Phoenix on the screen, there are times where he doesn't even have to say anything, but if you look at his eyes, and a lot of times directors will close up on his face, he can say an entire scene with his eyes and not speak a word.
Yeah.
That doesn't work for animation.
No, I rather than not.
So the difference for me being in casting is when an actor comes in, if I can look at a piece of paper while they're doing their scene and I can be moved, or I can get the humor and not be looking at them, then obviously that's good for us.
I'm just thinking this paranoid actor who's like, she's not looking at me, she's not paying attention.
Well, I've actually kind of trained myself for the actor to think that I'm looking at them, and I'm kind of zoned out or glazed over from, like I've learned how to avert my attention in that way and kind of just listen to the experience. Or sometimes we even tell them that we're doing that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the directors will have an image of the character kind of pinned up in front of them while they're listening to the actor, to kind of give them that experience too.
100%.
We warn them. If we try not to freak them out too much.
I mean, voice acting seems to have boomed over the last, I don't know, 10 years in terms of like people are doing audiobooks, voiceovers, animation. Like it just seems to have boomed into this whole other side of the acting industry that people hadn't really thought about.
It's really ideal for a lot of actors too, especially busy actors, because if you're locked into a TV series, for instance, or if you're doing a movie and you're in, Bulgaria, for instance, and you are not available to do anything else, and you're just, sitting waiting for your turn to go in for your scene, and then there's 3 weeks in between scenes, but you can't fly home, you can always go into a studio and record for an animated series or for a book or for another movie or whatever. You're never not available to do animation or something where you're doing voiceover. So it's a very convenient other job.
Do you have any tips for actors who are thinking about trying to do a bit more voice work and how they might be able to broaden their skills in that way?
For me, for Disney animation, for feature animation, I personally am not interested in all of the different voices that you can do. I usually hire people for their own voice and for their acting skills. So for me, I think it's really important for an actor to be able to improvise. So improv classes or sketch comedy classes are super helpful, and also acting classes. Less important for me are voiceover classes, and I'm using air quotes again, which I hate, but it happens sometimes. I don't love voiceover classes, and I don't love cartoon voices. So those are not helpful to me. I rarely hire actors to come in and put on a voice. Occasionally we do have there's one actor that happens to be in a lot of our films that my directors feel is a talisman for us. He's our good luck charm. His name's Alan Tudyk, and he does play a different character in bunch of our different films, and he'll do a voice. He'll put on a character. He plays a chicken in one of our films. He plays King Candy in one of our. He does it. He just plays a bunch of different voices. He is somebody that we have put on a voice. But for the most part, everybody uses their own voice. So I wouldn't recommend, for my purposes, taking,
but improv is a huge part of animation, isn't it?
Yes. For us, it is definitely, especially because at our studio, our writers are on staff. So they're usually in the booth with, in the recording room with the actors when they're recording for production. And they're constantly doing rewrites, and they're looking to the actors to help them create these characters and make them as authentic as possible. And the actor, who knows the character better than the actor does, because the actor is the closest person to the character. So if the actor thinks that the character would say something, the writer encourages the actor to give it a try.
Yeah.
And so it's if you have these improv skills and you're able to think on your feet how the character would speak, it's definitely encouraged in our recording.
The process of animation kind of baffles me slightly. It's so topsy-turvy in comparison to live action or TV or whatever. It's just
the joke is at our studio that there's never a full script. There's never like a shooting draft of the script until the film is delivered to the theater and somebody transcribes it. So it's just constantly being rewritten and torn down and redone. We have like a screening process where like a lot of the members of the studio, they call a story trust, will come in and they'll give notes on it and they'll tear it down and redo it. And it's just, until it's perfect. And I think that's why it takes so long to make these movies. It can take 4 years to make an animated feature, but B, that's the perfection that Disney is looking for. They want it to be, they spend a lot of money making these movies and they want it to be up to the quality that the audience deserves and expects from Disney.
It is true. So can we talk through maybe a case study of the casting process? Can we maybe use Frozen, for instance?
Okay, so every project is different and has its own personality. And Frozen was no different. And the first question that everybody asked me is, did you know that it was going to be such a huge success while you were working on it? And the answer is always no, because if we did, then we would just do the same thing every time so that we would have a $1 billion movie every single time.
I mean, that would be nice.
Let's just put that away. Frozen is interesting because the studio was under different leadership at the time. And that leadership really liked a particular process to begin with before the project was greenlit, to do a table read with a rough draft of the script, a very rough version of the script. And my role at the beginning was to invite a bunch of actors, just actors that I thought might service that rough draft of the script, to come to this table read and read the script out loud in front of a bunch of directors at the studio and some writers and some story people and the executives to see if we had a viable project.
Right.
So the director would work with them maybe like a day in advance. And I would invite all of these actors to come in who I either knew or who some agents would pitch to me and say, oh, what's the role? And we would talk about it and they'd say, oh, well, so-and-so would probably do this. So I invited a group and we had a very cool group of actors. A lot of the roles changed so much that the actors that we invited to that table read weren't even right for the roles that ended up in the movie anymore anyway.
Yeah.
And some of them weren't even singers, but it didn't matter because we were just reading the script at the table.
It's just, it's for the writers really at that point, hearing.
Yeah, it's just, do we have a viable project? Is this going to work if we try to, it was a workshop basically.
Yeah.
So we do this table read, which by the way, Josh Gad was at that very first table read. The project wasn't even called Frozen, and he read the role of Olaf at the table read. And the first thing after the table read that our former creative executive said was, if we make this movie, that kid is playing that part. And that was
Josh a name at that point?
No,
He was a
he had not
late.
done Book of Mormon. He had done nothing of note at that
Right.
point. I believe that he had done some correspondence on the Daily Show.
Right. So he was a fresh find, and it was just immediately a perfect fit.
And it was by accident, because I'm very fond of telling people that I had asked somebody else to come in and do it. And that person, who's, I cannot even remember, I swear to you, that I can't remember who it was at this point, but that person got a paying gig and fell out like a couple days before the table read. And so I was scrambling to find somebody to replace them, and someone else who I had reading some ancillary roles, who was a friend of mine. I called him and I said, I need to replace this person, and my director would really like somebody who is like a comedic person who has a lisp to come in and read this silly snowman. Do you know anybody? I'm desperate. And my friend said, oh yeah, I know this great guy, and he's super funny, you'll love him, blah blah blah. And I was like, please don't let me down. And I called Josh. He gave me his cell phone number, and I was like, can you do this? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, you just call my agent, set it up, but I'll totally be there, it's fine.
Yeah.
And I was crossing my fingers. And I'd never met him before or anything. I didn't really know anything about him, except that I trusted this other guy who was reading these ancillary roles for me.
Yeah.
And then Josh
Oh
came
my
and he
goodness.
like knocked it out of the ballpark. So
Wow.
that table read happened. They greenlit the project. Another one of our movies came out, which was a musical, and they decided to hold off on Frozen for a little while after that movie came out. I don't really know what was going on at the time, but Frozen sat for a little bit. And it wasn't even called Frozen, it was called Snow Queen or something else, but it sat for a little bit, and then it came back. And the director said to me, oh, in the meantime, I was casting Tangled.
Right.
And
another great one.
while I was casting Tangled, we were reading a bunch of actresses for Rapunzel, and one of those actresses was Kristen Bell.
Right.
And the directors on Tangled, Kristen was not right for what they were looking for Rapunzel.
Yeah.
And she was, but I knew what we were looking for Elsa. And I had heard at that point that Frozen was coming back.
Right.
So I called, while I had Kristen there, I called Chris Buck, who was our Frozen director, and I said, come downstairs, I have this actress here that I want you to meet, and she just auditioned for Tangled, but I want you to meet her before she leaves the building. So, and I was literally in the middle of a session,
right,
running other Rapunzels in and out of Tangled session, and I pushed them into the hallway together, and I said, here, you guys go talk. So Chris Buck and Kristen Bell hung out in the hallway down that way, and I went on with my Tangled auditions, and that's how they met. And
amazing.
That is history that way. And then when we got some pages together for Frozen, we just started auditioning people. And actually Kristen came back at that point and officially auditioned for Elsa. We had auditioned a bunch of other girls too, but she had already set the bar. And then we auditioned a bunch of Elsas, and we then had another table read, actually. And with most of the cast that we wanted for the movie. And Kristen and Adina actually sang at that table read together.
Yeah.
They sang Wind Beneath My Wings.
Oh.
And that they had rehearsed together. And it was like, oh my God.
You must have known Adina from Enchanted.
I knew her from, yes, I did know her from Enchanted.
Yeah.
Yes, she came, but she also actually came in for Tangled, but she was too young for Mother Gothel.
Right.
And not youthful enough for Rapunzel.
Yeah.
So she really fell in between the roles for Tangled, and I had kept her audition for that movie on my iPod because she sang, I will never forget, she sang Blackbird for that audition. I auditioned her in New York and I kept it on my iPod because it was so beautiful. And I couldn't get her, I couldn't shake her for Frozen.
Well, this just goes to show, isn't it? It's like auditions, yes, they may be for one thing, but you need to build relationships with these casting directors to like, because you never know what's going on behind the scenes, do you?
Oh, of course. Auditioning for something, in my mind, just because you're auditioning for whatever it is that you're going in the room for, doesn't mean that it's actually for this role. It could be for anything. And also at my studio, because we have so many directors and producers and writers on staff, we all hear, or all of the creative people on each project hear each other's auditions, or they see actors in the building, for each other's other projects or whatever. And so they're constantly being exposed to each other's talent, and then you could end up in something else. We had Jamie Chung actually did when we were first working on Moana, we had a table read for Moana, and Jamie Chung did us the favor of reading Moana at the table read before we greenlit that project, just as a favor to us, which I'm super grateful for. And before we even did Moana, she ended up, because our director for Big Hero 6 was at that Moana table read. He heard her at the Moana table read and said, hey, I really like her for this part in Big Hero 6. And she ended up in Big Hero 6 way before Moana even came out, which she wasn't right for. I mean, Moana was a musical about a Polynesian princess, so that role wasn't for her.
So to take it back a couple of steps, the project's being kind of greenlit and you've got a more solid idea of what the characters are like. Yes. But again, those characters are not going to be fully developed for a long time.
Yes.
So when you're getting a casting brief, what does that casting brief look like?
I work with the writer to kind of make up a little blurb about who the character is. And then I start talking to the agents about what we're looking for. And sometimes if it's really complicated, then I'll put out a breakdown.
Right.
And I just put as little as humanly possible on the breakdown because I don't want to give too much away.
Right. Disney, I guess you've got these secrets to protect as well.
Yeah, Disney likes to hold things pretty close to the vest. A lot of times when we put out sides, material for the actors to read, then sometimes the directors will use fake material. Either they'll use material from pre-existing projects, or even we've gone so far as to use material from plays that are, from long ago, or, or they'll even change the names and some of the stuff going on in the scenes to try and protect the IP. Sometimes we do worldwide searches, and I hire, casting consultants and casting directors in other parts of the world to help us do searches, and we'll do open calls. I've had, I put out calls where people have submitted themselves on YouTube, or Vimeo, and they sent us their auditions, and we've called them directly.
So it just depends on the project, really.
Yeah, it really depends on the project and how narrow the pool is for a particular role. When we did Moana, like I was talking about before, when you're looking for a 14-year-old who can sing and who is funny and who has the acting chops to carry a movie, opposite somebody like Dwayne Johnson, that's a pretty tall order, and that required a huge search. I mean, we looked high and low for and we ended up fortunately with Auli'i Cravalho, and
she was such a find. Her voice is astonishing.
She's amazing, and she's a wonderful human being, and it took 18 months to get to her.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So
So when they come to audition, or yeah, when they first initially come to like in the room audition, are you sitting there with like a tick list, a criteria list of things that
no.
or is it just
So
I'm just gonna go off my gut here?
The first audition, I try to make things as casual as possible, because the more I don't even know what the word is, but
Regimented.
yeah, I guess the more regimented it feels, the more nervous it makes the actor.
Right.
But if pre-pandemic, if you come into my office, it feels like a living room. There's couches in there and a throw rug and pillows, and we sit down in my office. This is for a pre-read, you know, and you'll come into my office, we chat for a second. I ask if you have any questions. I sit down and run the scene with you, you know, and we'll do it again if, you know, if you want to, if you screw up, whatever it is. I don't want any actor leaving my office feeling like they didn't get their best shot at something. And then if it's a musical, you hop up and you sing in my office, and I sit there and watch you. And it's weird because I'm sitting like, you know, 5 feet from you and you're singing. So sometimes I'll ask the actor, like, you can sing, you can face the wall if you want, or I'll turn around, whatever it is.
I think that would make it even more awkward, no?
We try to do it in the least awkward way possible. But, you know, it is what it is. I mean, like, everybody else did it that way too. So that's what I say. I'm like, look, everybody who comes in here sings. So it's not weird for you to do it. If you want to face, because I have a huge window in my office too, and it faces out to like a garden area and the street. So if you want to sing out to the garden, you can sing out to the garden.
Little public performance, go for it.
Yeah, exactly. So they sing, and it's funny because it gets really loud in there.
I love it.
And then if it, you know, when we do it for producers and directors, we do it down in the recording studio in my building, and then, you know, you have like a few other people just looking through a window at you. And I usually sit in the booth with the actor, or and when I say booth, everybody thinks of like, oh, it must be like a closet, but it's really not. It's like the size of my office.
Right.
It's not small at all. And if it's a musical, then I have a pianist that I work with, Sam, who's awesome, and he comes, and the actor will bring their sheet music with them, and he'll warm up with them and make sure that the pacing and the key are right and everything first, and then he plays for them, and they get an opportunity to sing for the director with the pianist playing for them. And we record it. And then once all of the auditions have happened, and the director has a few ideas of who they are interested in, we will cut their auditions to images. So we'll play their vocals up against artwork, and we'll watch it on a screen.
Right.
So we remove the image of the actor, the visual of the actor, and put it up against the artwork. And then sometimes we'll play two actors against each other if they're going to appear in a scene together. Like we would play Elsa and Anna up against each other to see if their voices are too similar, if the audience is going to get confused about who's talking. Or if it's two people, like if they're, you know, going to appear in a scene, in many scenes together, if they're love interests, or, you know, to see if their voices sound pleasing together.
That's so interesting. I never thought about having to do that, just to see if their voices are too similar.
Yeah, or if age, you know, if you have like a father and son, for instance, like a lot of times we don't hire somebody that's actually the age that they're playing. Like for instance, Elsa and Anna, those two actresses, they're in, you know, they're not 18 and 21, but they're playing 18 and 21. So you want to know, like, do they actually sound 18? Or you have a father that is actually in his 40s, but he's playing in his 60s, and you have a son that's in his 40s and he's playing in his 20s. You want to make sure that you know, that they actually can pull it off.
Does he have a young voice? Does he have an old voice? I mean, looking at him, it kind of seems like it does, but when you put this picture on it,
yes. Exactly. So
That's
you
so
have to make sure that, you know, when the artwork is there, that you're actually cheating in the right direction. So that, and then we decide, we determine, you know, we'll all sit in the room and determine, like, is this the right thing? And fortunately, I work with directors who a lot of them have experience, and some of them are newer. We are working with some first time animation directors, but everybody's pretty respectful of the department heads that they're working with.
Mm.
And so I do find that a lot of the directors defer to the casting department and say, like, what do you think?
Right.
Are you, or they'll make a decision and say, you know, Jamie, is this the right choice? Or, you know, do you feel like we have something better? We kind of come to the decision together. I wouldn't
Yeah.
say that our directors don't make decisions in a vacuum. They're very collaborative.
Yeah.
And then when the director does make the decision and they bring the actor in and they hire them, they collaborate with the actor too.
Mm.
So, and I think that's why our projects are as good as they are, because it's not one single person's vision that ends up there. It is a director driven studio, but it is a collaborative effort.
I always think that's the best thing about working in film or theatre. It is the collaboration that makes the work better, you know?
For sure. These projects are too big for one person to carry the entire burden, you know. It's you know, at one point there was 900 people in our building before the pandemic. I mean, if every person puts their fingerprint on a particular project, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot of influence.
Definitely. So when you're you've found a person who you think is good, do you also have to think, can this person look after this film publicly? Like,
yes,
who can walk down the red carpet, who can go on these talk shows?
That is a really great question. Absolutely. I try myself as a casting director. I think part of my job is that I watch what goes on in the waiting room. I see how actors relate to my staff. Right. I see, you know, when they come in and out, if they come more than once to the studio before they're hired, or if I, you know, casting direct, like I have a group of friends that are casting directors. We all talk. Right. I know what goes on in the industry. Also, you know, stuff gets back, and actors that don't have a good reputation for behaving themselves, right, or, you know, it gets back to us. Yeah. I try really hard to make sure that I'm aware of, you know, when we go ahead to hire somebody, I try and make sure that I'm aware of whether or not there's somebody that's easy to work with, because the truth is that a lead in one of our movies may come in and work on the project. You know, they might record 30 days over 2 years, or you know, 15 or 20 days over a year and a half. But then once the movie gets ready to come out, there's a whole publicity tour. Yeah. You know, they come in and out of the studio, or they might travel with our directors. Under normal circumstances, not pandemic circumstances. There's press junkets, and then there's also the awards. You know, the whole you know, potential of going to the Oscars and doing press for that, or, you know, once you're a Disney princess, it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving. There could be openings, there could be, you know, singing for the president, there could be rides that are opening. There's Disney consumer products. There's you know, across the company, there are appearances. There's you know, an obligation that comes along with it. And
I'm thinking, not only do they have to be able to pull off the role, they're becoming a representative of the Disney brand.
Yes, they are. And they have a choice as to how involved they do become. It doesn't have to take over your life. I think there are some actors that lean into it more than others. I think we were talking about Josh before. I think he really loves being Olaf, and everything that he has an opportunity to do, playing Olaf and being Olaf and doing stuff with the studio where he has an opportunity to, you know, like I said, lean into it, he likes to do. And there are other, you know, princesses who, you know, choose not to do all of the, you know, stuff that they get to do. It's up to them. But to me, the most important thing is that I don't send these directors who I love and adore working with off with people who aren't going to treat them properly. Because you know, it's a family, and we fortunately haven't had that happen. So, and I think it would be hard for any actor to come in and to be given an opportunity like this and to have earned it, because you do have, I mean, nobody that we've hired hasn't gone through a process. So to have worked this hard and to have earned this opportunity and to not take full advantage of it and to behave yourself would be silly.
Is there a pressure to pick big names?
No.
So when you're looking for a princess, are you seeing everyone from new to established and everyone in the middle?
Yes, absolutely. From the very beginning, when I took this job, I have heard from everybody that that Disney in and of itself is a big enough name to sell the project.
Yeah.
So I can put it out of my head that I need to secure name talent in order to help market or sell the project. That doesn't occur to me at all during the casting process. It really doesn't.
That's so lovely to hear.
I mean, I audition anybody who could be right for the movie, and the person that gets the role is the person that's right for the project and that's right for the role. You know,
I'm so glad to hear that.
Sometimes the person that ends up with the part, there are people that are way more famous that had auditioned for the part than the person that got it.
I love it. So you're working on Encanto now, is that right?
Yeah, Encanto comes out in the fall, and it is it's a musical that Lin-Manuel Miranda is writing the lyrics for. It takes place in Colombia, and we have an amazing cast, and I can't tell you that much about it because they haven't released too much information, but it is a beautiful story, and the artwork is just incredible. There's a teaser trailer, I believe, online.
Yeah.
But the music's beautiful, and the artwork is just, I mean, it's just luminescent.
Jamie, I've got one last question for you, because I've now taken up quite a lot of your time.
Yes, ma'am. No, ask away, please.
Just to, I guess, summarize, in keeping with the podcast title, what are the good, bad, and mad things about your job?
The good, there are too many good things to list. It just genuinely makes me happy. That I feel extremely fortunate that I get paid to do something that I feel proud of, and that, you know, fulfills me in so many ways, particularly creatively. And there's nothing like it. The bad, I don't particularly like the shenanigans that can happen sometimes during deal making. I don't love that part.
Are we talking like negotiations, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I don't love that.
Nah, it gets messy, doesn't it?
Sometimes it depends on who you're dealing with on the other side. And then the craziness, is that the mad part?
Yes, we're British.
The mad part is probably what keeps it interesting. Every project has its own craziness, and it's funny because I work on them for so long, because they take so long to do, and there's always something on every project that happens that kind of throws things up in the air and causes a tizzy, is what keeps me on my toes. I think that without the craziness, it might get boring sometimes. I don't know.
It sounds like you just have these, one, you've got people singing to you every day. Sounds that sounds amazing. But two, you have like these serendipitous moments where you're like, this is the perfect actor, this is the perfect fit. And that's it. It goes from there.
Yeah, the craziness. I mean, like, we're all crazy. Creative people are crazy. Actors are crazy. That's why they're so lovable.
I know.
Casting directors are super crazy.
Jamie, thank you so much for chatting with us.
It was honestly my pleasure, Meg. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Good Bad Mad podcast. Please subscribe to check out the next episode or leave a review if you liked it. You can find us on Instagram at goodbadmad or at goodbadmad.com for additional resources and information. See you next time.